facilities, all those.
Wow.
Hello, Amy, Harrill. We are live.
Oh, Shane, the things we talk about.
All of them good.
Oh my
Most
gosh.
of the time.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they
are.
Friday.
Happy Friday. Here we are.
Yes, here we are. It is Friday. It is almost 1:00 here on the East Coast. And finally, after literally,
it's been a minute.
I want to say Sunday, Father's Day. I did some planting and it started raining on Monday and did not stop until yesterday.
It's just been going.
I mean,
the whole East Coast is getting it for sure, man.
Wow.
Hopefully it's going.
Wow.
We shall see.
Yeah. And I just have to ask a random question. Have you been following that story about the submarine?
I have. Yes.
It's quite intriguing. The one thing I will say about it is it's quite sad. I don't even have words. I don't really know how to feel for the families because I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Terribly tragic.
But I thought it was interesting that the CEO of that company who was on that submarine, unfortunately, is recorded. I saw some interviews with him where he talks about how I think it was Michigan State or Washington State, one of these big research schools, and NASA had tested and consulted and had helped on the engineering of this submarine, but they both chimed in, and the university said, we've never seen this thing or talked to anybody about it. And NASA said, we consulted, but we were never a part of the engineering or testing.
Gotcha.
So it seems as though there was no rules they had to follow. Nobody inspected, even though they came into these different ports because of the engineering of this and the boat that it was on. It didn't have to go under the same inspection as the carrier, the mothership, so to speak, had to go through. And then, the Titanic is sunk in international waters. It's kind of a free-for-all out there. There's no rules.
Yeah.
So it's very sad. I mean, I think to myself, like, is there something else we could have done with all of that money and experienced something else besides getting on a vessel that wasn't rock solid to begin with? It was quite sad. I just, all of these questions have run through my head. Like I have felt this empathy. And then at the same time, I'm like, how did this happen? So it's been, I don't ever follow these news shows, but I heard something about a submarine and I was like,
yeah, you don't hear about that every day.
Right. I said, so I Googled it. It was everywhere. And I thought, oh my goodness. So it's been quite intriguing for me.
Yeah. It's tragic. Tragic.
Yeah, it is tragic. It is tragic. So what else would be tragic is if we do not talk about something that almost sunk the Titanic called Apple. So if you remember, Shane, back in the 90s, Steve Jobs had grown Apple to, it was at the same level of brand recognition and respect as Disney, Coke, all the major brands, right? The ones that were really impacting culture. Apple was up there. So Steve Jobs leaves, takes his money and goes home, right? They bring in a new leader, and unfortunately, Apple started to move away from communicating their values and started communicating their features.
Yeah.
So they were communicating things like the speed of their boxes, or their boxes, meaning computers, their boxes help people work better. They started talking about why they were better than Microsoft. And so the price, they started talking about the amount of speed you get for the fee. So it was it really moved. Well, what happened is that the market voted with their checkbook and moved away from buying Apple products. Why? Because they could really no longer understand what it was about.
Yep.
There had been something about it that caused them to have a real heart connection with the brand that suddenly wasn't there. And if we are really honest, the same thing happened with Starbucks. The exact same thing. And it's interesting to me that with the rise of Apple came the rise of the Starbucks coffee. The two kind of went hand in hand. The brands felt the same.
It did have a similar vibe.
Right? The consumer would buy their Apple product at the Apple store from a genius that knew their name, and then they'd scurry down the street and buy coffee from a barista that knew their name, and they'd sit in there, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So there was this kind of relational experience with these brands that started to go away when the brands started to scale. And this is critical. You and I have talked about, even in several of our episodes together, we have talked about why values matter, and they matter the same to humans, so much so that engineers that engineer systems of technology and algorithms where a human is interacting with the system of technology and it's getting data from the human, it is driven by values, human values. And so there's something to be said about it. And I thought it would be a good time to talk about value-based marketing versus feature-based marketing. So what has been your experience with those two lanes?
So I think historically, I came along in organizational leadership at a time where people were still thinking, feature-rich sales. Right? The more features, the better. The more bells and whistles that you could put on there, that's the differentiator. And it was a way to compete. Hey, our stuff's better than their stuff. Basically, where Apple fell into with that transition of leadership, where Jobs was out and a new person comes in, it's like, hey, we're better than Microsoft. We're better than them. Like, hey, they go this high, we go that high. Look at us. And what was driving the purchasing though was totally different than what the second leader picked up on. And I didn't figure that out until it was too late. So our business skyrocketed on some new introduction of features into the market. Yes. But then it also failed because of a lack of recognition that people make decisions based off the value, and they couldn't see the value anymore, no matter what features we added to it. We kept, listen, I'm telling you, we were feature, no response. Feature, declining response. Feature, rapidly declining. We reached a place where no matter what we did with features, it wasn't moving people because we were trying to move in ways that weren't connecting. That's the thing I see the difference between these, feature-based marketing and value-based marketing is connection, right? Human beings crave authentic connection. And back in the day when I'm sharing a computer with somebody and an email address, can you imagine? I'm 104 years old. But anyway, back in that time, you weren't exposed to, all of that. Now it's like, my goodness. Just people crave authenticity because, they can tell all the fake and bake that's come along. I'm not going to be fooled by that whole feature stuff anymore. Right? So it's people crave this authentic connection, and that's where value-based marketing comes in. And I'm new to that world. Here I am, I'm only 5 years into truly getting just scratching the surface of an understanding. But to me, that authenticity is the differentiation between feature and value.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Authenticity. And one cannot be authentic in a value-based marketing campaign if one is not living the values of which they speaketh.
True.
Right?
True.
So in one of our episodes, we talk about Brene Brown's comments around walking out your values. And you had mentioned in that episode the values on the wall need to walk the hall. Was that the comment?
Yeah. So you gotta figure out how to get the values off the wall and down the hall. Off the wall and down the hall.
That's it. Off the wall and down the hall.
That's it. Okay? That's it. You got to emphasize the hall.
That's right. And it's always better with a Southern accent.
That's right.
And so here is the reality, is that we're going to link a video below ours in the description here. And it's just a short video of Steve Jobs coming back in 1997. And he at one point worked with a marketing firm. So he brings that marketing firm into the Apple equation because he needed people that could communicate a story from the position of value. And Apple's value was that one of their core values was they believe that great people could do great things, right? And that anyone that wanted to do great things was a great person. So they launched this marketing campaign to re-energize the Apple brand. It had nothing to do with the computers. It had everything to do with highlighting really exceptional people. Now, in that video, there's a couple of things he says, Shane, that I just really love. And one of them was marketing is value-based. So if we are not looking at our brands and our services and our businesses through the lens of our values, then our messaging is always going to feel inconsistent to the market. Because if we're not living and we don't know what the values are that are driving this brand, then we cannot communicate them both directly and indirectly. And the market will respond to that. So having a leader, the think tank, the founder, the principal, the builder, the owner in that process for a period of time, ensuring that the marketing is coming from a value position and not a features position is critical.
Yeah, I think value at the organizational level is predicated, like, comes after, another way to say it, organizational value comes after the founder's value for the end user. Like, so the founder has a vision of this is where people are and this is where they could be, and this is what they care about in that journey. And I am choosing to value that as an owner. And I'm going to bring to market something that is valuable to this end user that I now take on and adopt as valuable myself. Like, so too many times, part of getting the values off the wall and down the hall is a lack of vision from the internal owner for how value transfer happens for employees so that they demonstrate that value that he initially did. This is where Jobs lost it, right? Like, he stepped out, there was no transfer of that value, and then it disappeared.
Yeah. And
so internal value, though, is preceded by an owner who is externally valuing what this journey of their prospective their journey of this prospective customer is experiencing. What do they value? And they adopt that value. They own it authentically, like it identifies with who they are. If not, they're not going to stay in business very long because they'll get tired of it and they'll move on,
Yeah. Well, and Jobs even says in that video that it's a noisy world and people are not going to remember us as brands. So we need to make sure what we are communicating is who we are, not what we do and not how good our stuff is, but who we are. And the only way they're going to hear who we are is if we're talking to them about who they are.
Correct.
They need to know.
And you said that so much better than what I said. Yes.
No, you said it. That's it. We have to be obsessed. We have to have a healthy obsession with who these people say they are. And we need to always be telling them, we hear you. We hear you. We are repeating back to you what you're saying to us. We are taking notice of the things that you take notice of. We are intimately involved in helping eliminate the obstacle that is keeping you from getting what you want. And that's what makes us as a brand so valuable, is we are your partner in this thing of eliminating the obstacle to get to your most desired outcome. And if I help enough people, this is what Zig Ziglar said, if you help enough people get what they want, you will have what you want. So the natural byproduct of putting the end users priorities first is that we will never have a money problem. We will never have a money problem. We will never have a respect problem. We will never have a credibility problem because we are focused first on someone else. So the direct result is we get what we want too.
Yep.
And so that is what happened with Apple by 2012. So it took a long time, people. Okay. Steve Jobs didn't just come back and woosah his magic wand and wear his black turtleneck every day and have what he wanted. It took from 97 to 2012 for Apple to be the most valuable brand in the world. But they did it. They did it. I would also say one last thing as we're closing. One thing I really love that he said is that we as brands and as owners have to be passionate about the problem we solve. So if you are always changing the feature conversation and you're always changing the problem you solve and the title you carry, no one is going to take us seriously or take you seriously. So I would really challenge you to define the problem, defend the solution you bring to that problem, and don't worry about what other people are doing, right? If we begin to compare, somebody said, I think, comparison is the theft of joy or whatever. I have seen in business that comparing ourselves to other people is the theft of everything. It robs our creativity. It robs our intellect. It robs our joy. We no longer enjoy what we're doing. We can only see what we don't have. And so if you are in fact disillusioned and discouraged, and you can only see what you don't have, and you can only see what is not happening, and you can only see the things that aren't working, then I would challenge you to take a step back and see where you've lost your way. Whose problem are you trying to solve? And why are you trying to solve somebody else's problem? Right? Like, you need to solve the problem you solve for the group of people in the world you solve them for, and keep getting better at it, because that is exactly how the systems you're operating learn. They get better and better over time. And so again, we say this, I'm going to say it again, that systems run your business, but you run the systems. And the way your system is operating is a direct result of how you are operating it. Shane, do you want to say anything as we close?
Well, that's good. I say we end it right there.